bit of scene setting, perhaps, to contextualize the discussion today. Now, the theme of the 2016 annual debate is Africa's investment prospects, which is a fairly general, fairly vague topic on the surface, but it really cuts to the heart of where Africa is today. Most of you in this room, if not all of you in this room, will be well aware that the continent has had a pretty good decade or so of economic growth and meaningful change, whether that's on the governance and policy side, whether it's on the private sector development side, and that experience has fueled a renewed optimism about Africa. As unprecedented levels of investment, unprecedented levels of interest from every part of the globe. We all know about the Chinas, the Brazils of this world, but you don't have to go far, all across Europe, North America, etc. People are talking about Africa.
On Wednesday, 20th April, the Business Council for Africa hosted its second annual debate at the Law Society in London under discussion Africa's investment prospects.
And this event comes at an important time. We've already heard, and we all know the continent is having to tackle some difficult economic conditions. Research from the World Bank showed that growth across sub-Saharan Africa slowed to 3% last year. But despite this, some positive things are happening. According to the World Bank's Doing Business survey, Africa accounted for 5 of the top 10 improvers this year. Uganda, Kenya, Mauritania, Senegal and Benin all climbing the rankings thanks to efforts to create a business-friendly environment. Africa's budding technology sector is going from strength to strength, spawning a new generation of technology entrepreneurs and creating applications such as M-Pesa that are making lives easier. Industries have benefited greatly from foreign direct investment. In Uganda, for example, the farming sector has attracted significant international investment and expertise, helping to increase output and get the most from the land available. So even if in the short term the region is experiencing some tough times, the long-term outlook for Africa remains bright.
Africa is increasingly becoming a hub for global trade and investment. The BCA works closely with its members to promote business opportunities and facilitate sustainable investment across the continent. Today, the BCA network supports over 400 companies and entrepreneurs across the African continent. This journey started some 60 years ago.
We can celebrate all that is good about our legacy and our heritage that comes with that age, but we recognize that we need to move forward and we need to keep up with the changing times, both in the marketplace and importantly with the needs of our own membership. We're very fortunate to have Arnold working with us, and I know he doesn't like us to mention too much in his modest way, but he is a great mentor and advisor, and I particularly take a lot of guidance from him in terms of where we go with the strategy for the BCA. He's very fond of saying, change is healthy, Karen, but change can also be painful. And over the last year, the BCA has had and has made several changes. But we will continue to change, and we need to do so as we believe that it's good both for the organization and for our membership. So change will keep happening. One thing that won't change, though, is the support that we give to our members, our organizations and companies trying to launch and expand their operations in Africa. We do this in various ways, and again, I won't go into this because most of you know about it already, but one point I would like to say is that our events program, which normally runs to approximately 30 events a year with 3 strong flagship events, will now be included in everybody's membership. So this is a change from the past, and we're developing more sector-focused meetings so that those topics that are of interest to you, the membership, will actually be reflected in the content of the meeting.
Africa is going through a transition, and I think Lanre was trying to bring up this issue, but Africa, as you know, is not a country. It is a continent of 54 countries, and typically the market tends to look at Africa in a very binary way. It's either doing well or it's not doing well. But I think that life is a little bit more complex than that. Obviously, we are facing headwinds with slowdown in China, dropping commodity prices. But Africa has never been a short-term play. The news of Africa remains very positive. The underlying factors, the fundamentals, in my opinion, are still quite strong. And so it remains a very exciting continent. Doesn't always play according to the rules, but then we're facing, for those of us who live here some of the time, a major risk in the UK of Brexit. And so we're not even sure whether we're part of Europe, or maybe they should join Africa. That would probably be a little bit safer now. The ongoing debate about Africa, it's very interesting one. I think Lanre alluded to it. But the BCA will continue to move forward. The BCA, with your support, and we welcome new members both within Europe, within the UK, but also out of Africa, who share a common objective. That is the objective that we believe, and I hope you share with us, that in spite of the ups and downs, Africa remains the most exciting place to be. And I've certainly enjoyed my 32 years or so of working on that continent. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you very much for coming. Welcome.
Sir Paul Collier, Professor of Economics and Public Policy at the University of Oxford, gave his perspective on Africa's future role in the global economy.
Global growth is really made up usually of two components. The economies that are at the frontier, OECD economies, their growth depends upon pushing the frontier, and that's basically technological innovation. There's some very influential work in economics suggesting that actually the technological frontier has slowed down. That we went through a sort of golden 50 years or so, and it's over. So technological frontier slow. That's bad for global growth. The other component of global growth is catch-up. Catch-up is par excellence what Africa's about. Right? Getting from where it is to that global frontier. And there's huge scope for catch-up. The last decade of African growth looked like a classic exercise in catch-up. You know, in literal sense, it was. Africa was growing faster than the world economy. But it wasn't doing so through a normal process of catch-up. It was doing so because the last decade was a peculiarly benign decade for Africa. There were four favorable circumstances, each conceptually separate, that came along like four buses at a bus stop. Boom, 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 boom. That was the decade. And the first bus to arrive was debt relief. At the beginning of the millennium, Africa was heavily indebted. Boom. Debt's forgiven. That was nice. And then the next bus came along, and that was the global commodity booms. Africa, most African countries, big resource exporters, and their export prices rose actually in an unprecedented manner. We speak of commodities as going through a cycle, but the last decade was referred to as the super cycle because it was so big. So that was the second bus to arrive. And then the third bus to arrive was a spillover from the rising commodity prices. At the beginning of the millennium, Africa was the least prospected continent. We think of it as resource rich, but per square mile, it was very resource poor. Per square mile of Africa, as of the beginning of the millennium, there was only 1/5 of the discovered natural assets as the typical square mile of the OECD. And so when commodity prices, resource prices went up, globally companies decided, right, let's invest in search. Where's the best place to look? It's the continent that's been least prospected. And so there was a wave, a massive wave of investment in prospecting, huge amount of discoveries. So a lot of countries which hadn't been resource rich became resource rich.